Good evening, everybody, and welcome along to Formula Sprint 2 2023. We're not quite ready for a race weekend just yet, but we're at Fuji for the first of the pre-season tests. It's wonderful to be back with GPVWC after a couple of months of a pre-season break. There's been a few changes in the broadcast booth. I'm Tom Dillon. Alongside me this evening is a man with 23 Super League 1 stars, Jan Granqvist. And Jan, chance to get a look at all of these teams and to just sort of figure out where we stand, I suppose. It should be a very interesting final hour.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello there, everyone. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting season to look out for new stars, new beginners in sim racing potentially. And all of them will be starting off right here, right now.
Absolutely. Well, on board with Michael to Oyama to start off this session. Well, I say to start off this session, it has been going since 7 o'clock in the UK. There's about 50 minutes left, 55 to be exact. We're just, well, I'm actually waiting for the timing tower to pop up. I'll give you the information. It's at the moment is Jerry Van Bussel for VMS Sun Edits Racing, the number 53 on the top of the tower. He's done 34 laps so far in this session. Stephen Lexo has actually, by my reckoning, completed the most, sitting down in second. He's done 60 laps so far. He's currently on a lap. And, well, not really seeing the dominance that we were expected of Lexo, I suppose. He is only testing today, as you can see, go purple in Sector 1 on this occasion. I don't believe he's got a permanent seat, Jan. He did mention that he was going to switch over to FS1. It is my understanding that that's what happened. There we go through the hairpin here at Fuji.
Wow.
Just having a bit of a slide on. Not the ideal lap for Stephen Lexo, but definitely testing his car at least.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting to see. Lots of in the order right now. So Stephen Lexo, a person that I do know, has even raced for my team once and did quite well even in Super Lights. So yeah, surprising to see him down in second. However, it is only a 1/10 gap to Bussel. However, it looks like over here Mikael Tuamala just about misses the apex for the final corner and pays dearly for it. But yeah, so far so good. Gaps look quite close, to be fair, at the top three.
Yeah, it does, and well, you should always take pre-season testing with a little bit of a grain of salt. Most of the teams just trying to focus on, I suppose, getting used to this car again. It's a very similar car to last year. I know that from my team that's entered this year. Caitlin Penny sitting down in 21st at the moment, our sole driver in the blue-coloured car. I didn't know this was a blue-coloured car. Actually, that's news to me. But anyway, it's a test session that basically the teams, as I understand it, are using to figure out what's going on, figure out how much fuel roughly you're using per lap, what tyre wear is going to be like, most importantly, and I suppose just try and figure out everything surrounding that.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring out there. It's a lot of good time right now to be testing these stuff while you're in the grid with everyone directly around you as a direct comparison. So it's always really good to see right here where you sort of stand with everyone else. Of course, there'll be people out there potentially even pulling out the little sandbags. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see who will finish first in this first preseason test.
Yes, as we're on board with Brandon Roberts out of South Africa for Deltec Racing Team. Hello to everyone in the YouTube chats as well for the first stream of the year for GPVWC. I see Hope Kauji talking about how it's a nice car in the thumbnail. Is Brandon Roberts, an external shot of his car. Very fancy livery this year, Deltec, I have to say. Very striking with the red, black and white almost streaks. They have got yellow flags for a moment in Sector 3. They can clear up. I'm not too sure who that may be. They turn up again, the yellow flags. Actually, I think we have noticed so far in this test, in the short time we've been on, and you see there, Brandon, once more, the cars seem to be generally a little bit more slidey than perhaps they were in the previous season. Maybe the team's just struggling with temperature or something. Brandon again struggling, and in fact, I think he might just lose this one. He's definitely lost the lap. He's managed to save the car, though.
Yeah, what you say is definitely true. I even did a few laps myself in the car just prior to this test to experience just how it is for these people testing right now. And yeah, it is, as you say, it is very slidey, particularly into the corners, which is an interesting characteristic for this car. Very difficult to deal with, especially in Fuji with a lot of on and off banking corners. Yeah, a lot of off camber corners, as you see here, turn 1. Very easy to miss the apex and also miss your acceleration point. But yeah, it is a very difficult car to handle here in Fuji, I've noticed myself, so props for everyone who are able to handle it today.
Definitely a struggle so far. Yellow flags in Sector 1 proving that point. 49 minutes to go in this first test. And I do wonder, as you say, who's putting the cards close to their chest, and actually who's got setups and things working this season. You could sort of force a previous season setup to work with these cars. It might not get you very far. I suppose this is what we're trying to figure out in this first pre-season test. I mean, if we look ahead to the schedule, as I understand it, I don't think this will be the only pre-season test of the year. I think we might have another one coming up. However, I think the point stands that this may just be one of the main opportunities to really get used to this car heading into the season.
Yeah, for sure. As we see again, the final corner, very difficult approach, a very difficult exit as you go on the throttle, and I saw the car spinning right out of the exit, hitting the exit curve, and yeah, that's that lap done.
Well, I'm actually looking at my calendar here, and I do understand it that the next pre-season test, there is not another pre-season test. This is the only one. We go straight to the San Marino Grand Prix on the 28th of February. So this is really the only chance, apart from that first official practice session, to get an eye in and a look at the teams. And I also understand it that my team's the only one that hasn't got a two-driver lineup sorted just yet. So, well, that's very interesting. We have to make sure that's sorted by February. But in terms of the driver lineups, I don't want to put you on the spot here, yeah, but if you have got them anyway, are there any particular driver lineup, even just on this session right now, that stands out to you as perhaps title challengers?
That's a really good question. So for me, it's very difficult to really say any particular names, especially since I'm not very well versed in a lot of them. However, Luke Mitchell, right now and currently in third, seems to be a really good up-and-coming driver. I've seen him drive plenty of good results, and looks to be even setting the purple first sector right now as we go on to the hairpin, approaching the oh so terrible chicane. As we see, they're just about losing the car, however, managed to get the grip back into the rear tyres, going purple even in the second sector, it looks like. And here we go, a lot of off and on camber corners. Can he handle the rear going into them? Very nice early apex. Manages to keep the car stable through there, and now it's only the final challenge. The final corner, just about a snap of oversteer at the entry as expected. However, he manages to keep it, and let's see what the lap time tells us.
Should be a decent lap for Luke Mitchell. 27 to beat. The line's quite late here at Fuji. He is going to beat the 27, but only a 27.8.
Wow, just about.
Yes, 900ths off of pole position. Well, I say pole position, top of the test. I apologise, force of habit there.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, 900ths of a second. That's a very, very tightly bound top two.
Here's Dominic Slabon. Oh dear, he's lost the car there. And, well, good to get those out of the way in testing, I suppose, before the first race. And, I find it quite interesting, actually, that we're testing at a track like Fuji and not a more traditional testing track like Catalonia, because if you think about Fuji when compared to a track like San Marino, in fact, even the first few tracks of the season, I think here, yeah, we've got San Marino, Bahrain, and Australia. They're all completely different in characteristic to not only each other, but definitely to this Fuji circuit, which stands out quite as a bit of a sore thought, I suppose, a bit of a red herring. So it's slightly surprised that this is the track we've chosen to test at, and it certainly is going to give the drivers a bit of a unique challenge.
Yeah, it is a unique track, isn't it? And I do, however, draw some comparisons between Fuji and Istanbul. But yeah, generally, Fuji seems to be even more trickier than that of Istanbul. As we see here, a nice three-car train. Oh, and as they let through these two, Maxime Berlou, to complete his lap in the tow of another Optimal Esports car, as he abandons his lap, goes off to exit. But yeah, about Optimal, they also accepted a driver called Magnus Okinaog to take the test today, and he's a good friend of mine, actually, and he's sort of new to R-Factor 2, so it's been interesting for me to see where exactly he'll place today in the test, and he seems to be doing very good for himself in P11 out of this grid. So yeah, definitely props to him, and very well done so far. As we see Mikael Tuomala completing his lap. Is it going to be an improvement? It looks like he's been down in the middle sector. So yeah, just another lap around Fuji.
I think ticking off the laps is definitely the most important thing at the moment, as Tuomala goes into 9th position. I think really Luke Mitchell, to sort of circle it back to what we were talking about earlier, I think Luke Mitchell might just be the one to look out for the championship this year. He was very good last season. Did miss out sort of towards the end. I think really, I don't want to be harsh on Josh Danner, but I think he came out of nowhere to win that championship. Actually, he definitely, for me, wasn't really in that fight right up until the very end, really, where he won the championship. It was quite impressive from him. Actually, I thought Luke Mitchell was very much in the hunt right up until the end. He had a couple of poor performances through no fault of his own, really. Sorry, Jack Mayer, not Josh Downard, towards the end of this season. I had to double check myself on that one. But I think Luke Mitchell had a very good season, and it just sort of fell off for him towards the end, and I think that would have been a frustrating thing for him, and definitely coming back now, trying to truly get one over on his brother, who sits down in 14th position of Scott Mitchell-Marr. And I actually do want to talk about the calendar for a moment, because it is an exciting one, actually, Jan. There's a couple of tracks that we go to for the first time in GPVWC. Jeddah, I don't think we've been there before. That's certainly a new mod for 2023. And then looking further through, we've got some just exciting tracks overall. You've got your classics like your Spas and your Monza. That's round 11 and round 12, of course. You wouldn't have Spa without Monza, and Monza without Spa. Then we go to Singapore, Japan, Abu Dhabi. There's a lot of tracks, and there's a lot of tracks with very different characteristics, tracks that are going to really try to challenge these drivers. And of course, most importantly, I suppose, if we go back to the point of using Fuji as a test track, Fuji's not on the calendar, so this doesn't act as almost a free practice one for a potential race in Fuji later in the year.
Yeah, that's true. However, it is also still important for those who are making setups for their team to get used to the car and its characteristics over these very different types of corners. And it will definitely pay dividends in the later parts of the season, when things that you have learned that work with this car might very well work for some tracks that you might not have expected.
Now, you're a man who's travelled around the career ladder quite a fair bit in your time, Jan. You've raced in Super League and actually got onto the podium on one occasion over there, as Luke Mitchell was purple in the first two sectors, goes off of the circuit though, and I suspect might just lose that purple lap time, only 6,000 in sector 2. But I also suspect you've done a fair few pre-season tests in your time in GPVWC, and how do you go about approaching it as a driver?
So I must correct you here. Interestingly enough, I myself am quite new to GPVWC. So I haven't been around for that long, and I haven't actually even gotten a podium in Super League yet. I've definitely raced there as an emergency. But yeah, to get back to your point, I've done one Super League young drivers test beforehand, and I definitely know from my experience, it was quite tough actually to keep up with the rest of the grid hot lapping. So definitely important to sort of pace yourself well, know exactly what you can and can't do, and potentially look for stuff that works in the setup, but don't go too wild, obviously. You might get lost trying to set things up for the car, and then all of a sudden nothing works and you get frustrated. So yeah, it's really a time for yourself just to take your time, chill out, and see what the others are doing. Maybe even get a few cheeky racing moments with some of your friends here and there. And yeah, just enjoy yourself, I think, is the most important thing.
You know, I have to say, I feel utterly betrayed by the GPVWC website. I totally just searched in your name to see what you've done in Super League, and it looks like, in fact, I don't know what I've done. I think I must have accidentally read the person below you, Andy Graydon, who sits in 23 Super League stars. You unfortunately have 3, so I apologise about picking you up maybe a little bit too much, but this is my mistake. It's Scott Mitchell-Marr, he's purple in Sector 1. King's Racing with a very nice new livery as well, actually. My favourite part of testing, actually, is to see all the new liveries, but yeah, I apologise about that, yeah. Well, you know, I mean, you've done pretty well in your first 3 rounds in Super League. 16 points to your name. I mean, not many people can boast 16 Super League points. I certainly can't.
Yeah, thanks. It's that, but to go back to the King's livery, I definitely do like it. It's even sporting some very familiar colours to me. Might even see them potentially in one of our cars. Who knows?
Well, I have to say, I love as well when I introduced you as Jan Granqvist, who's 23 Super League stars. You didn't you didn't correct me. You just thought I'll take the bigging up, but no, fair enough. Scott Mitchell-Marm is heading up to the line. It won't be a purple lap time, 0.2 of a second off in sector 2, but it does look like it's going to be a respectable lap time, 28.7. And whilst we do this, it looks like we've got an interview. In fact, I'm just going to double check that there we go, that Caitlin is ready for an interview. She did tag me in my team's chat, and we'll drag in Caitlin Penny. Caitlin, it's a new team, I have to say. A very good choice of team ahead of this season, and well, you seem to be off to a reasonably decent start, sitting down in 19th of the test. But you've done a fair few laps. You're getting used to the car. 52 laps so far. How's the car feeling?
Yeah, that's the thing for me. I mean, well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for giving me a seat, actually, because I mean, it's no secret that I am quite a long way off the pace of the top guys, and not really looking to get any closer anytime soon. But I'm hoping that this year will paint me as a bit of a have-a-go hero with some underdog successes and all of that. So all I can do is keep turning in the laps and hope that some results come my way, because I am not getting there on pure pace, put it that way.
Encouraging stuff to hear, but you've done 52 laps. That must give you a pretty good handle on the car. How does this one feel compared to last year? We've suggested that maybe it's a case of it being a lot more slidey, a lot more nervous. Is that something that you've experienced?
It is, actually, and I'm really not sure why, because the car is supposed to be exactly the same as last year's car. I know that the mod says there's been a slight update in engine side. It's gone from a 1.8 litre to a 2 litre, and I'm not sure if there's actually been any change on that or whether it's just rounded up now. But the actual chassis and the tyres and everything like that are supposed to be exactly the same. So maybe it's always been this way, and I don't know, the track's just a bit greasy or something. I know there hasn't been any rain, but maybe it's just a bit cold. And I swear there's probably less grip out there than there has been. I mean, about an hour ago, I felt way more in control of the car than now. So yeah, I'm a little confused by it, but that's absolutely the case. It is very, very twitchy, especially in the third sector.
Well, looking at the track temperature, it's 39 degrees Celsius.
Well, that won't be it then.
Ambient is only 10 degrees Celsius. It's certainly not the hottest day over there in Fuji. But in terms of heading forward to the season, we've spoken about how Saudi Arabia being, to my knowledge, the only new track on the calendar. Are there any circuits that do stand out to you this year as ones you're excited for?
I mean, Saudi is honestly going to be a really good opportunity for me, because I've always gone decently well at street circuits. Monaco last year was one that got away. I could easily have got my first top 10 at Monaco if I didn't blow race 2. But the good thing about street circuits is that all you really have to do is avoid the inevitable incidents that happen up ahead, and you can pick up some quite solid points. So Saudi, it's a new circuit. People are going to be making mistakes. And as much as I trust the people around me to race cleanly, sometimes new circuits can catch people out. So yeah, I'm going to put in a lot of laps for circuits like Saudi and Monaco to try to qualify slightly higher up than I usually do. And hopefully that will give me the chance to be ahead of the accidents when they happen rather than in them. But we will see. But yeah, Saudi I'm looking forward to.
I won't possibly wish to quiz you on any setup changes that you've made this particular lap. Definitely not as you're one of our drivers. Maybe if you were driving for someone else. But when you look ahead to this 2023 season, you've said your goal is to just get basically some points on the board and put in some standout performances. Do you think, looking at the end of the season, do you think maybe a sort of top 15 championship finish, maybe a top 10 championship finish is something that is attainable for you?
Well, maybe. I mean, that would be a best case scenario. I'm really sorry that this probably doesn't sound too hopeful for you, Tom, but you knew what you were getting yourself into when you signed me. You've watched me race and all of that. No, I'm not particularly quick compared to these other guys out here. I don't really know what it is. Because I'm decent in real life, I'm decent in karting. It's just that in sim racing, I've never quite had it. So, like I said, I'm hoping that this year will paint me as a bit of a have-a-go hero. And I think my next goal is probably to get a top 10 finish, because last year I was missing out on points left, right, and center. Didn't even get into the reverse grid at any point last season. So if I can do that, then I can hopefully get closer to doing my first top 10 finish. And I mean, championship standings at the end of the year, it really depends on how many quick guys come into and out of the championship throughout it, because I mean, I'm going to be about maybe 15th, 16th at every round. So it's not necessarily going to amount to a 15th or 16th place in the championship. There are going to be guys coming in and, you know, winning a couple of races and scoring more points than I can do in the entire season. So I guess it all depends on that. Sorry, Tom.
It's okay. I mean, we're not expecting fireworks, that's for certain. But thank you very much for joining us, Caitlin. Very good job on today. Not easy to grind through 52 laps. I'd normally get bored.
I've got more in me yet. I'm about to go out again.
Yes. So we'll keep a close eye on you, and thank you very much for joining us. And we'll let you get back through to the test.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you, Jan.
That was Caitlin Bennett debuting for my team this season. That should be very interesting. In fact, I have a little piece of information if I just dig through my my Google Sheets here. Caitlin Bennett will be the 33rd driver to represent my team in all R-Factor 2 competition. Actually, only the 7th in GPVWC. The last person to represent us in GPVWC was Redrick Leon in the Brazilian Grand Prix of ITC Div 2 in 2019. So very exciting to have Caitlin on board. But here's Magnus Arkenhaug going into the pits. Well, not actually going into the pits, but having to escape to garage. 30 minutes to go, Jan. Starting to see who the winners and losers, well, I say winners and losers, who the people who have work to do before San Marino in 28 days' time, and people who perhaps were in much better standing ahead of this season. I'd say so far a pretty successful test.
Yeah, I'd agree. And yeah, definitely a few people now starting to really show their true pace now. Definitely the top 10 looking quite close together and under a second from each other, and definitely interesting again seeing just how these different cars handle this track, considering setup. Looking at Dominic Slapon right now doing his own little adventure outside of the track. But yeah, with the setup, it's interesting. There's obviously the classic wing debate on whether to run more or less downforce. And then there's obviously a lot to do with the chassis and just how the car handles the different off-camber corners potentially, and maybe a few bumps here and there. It's definitely something they've been working on this last couple of hours, and seeing now the top 5 seem to be the people who've gotten it right within half a second of each other. I'd say that's a good mark to be in. Really, yeah, a good job from everyone so far.
And might just be starting to see a few qualifying runs happening as well towards the end of this session, as it's rubbered up, as that track temperature we expect perhaps also increase. I think one of the interesting things about a Japanese circuit is that, of course, at the moment it is actually the middle of the morning over there in Fuji. It's 6 o'clock in the morning actually, so that temperature should start to slightly increase as we head on through the next half an hour or so, as the sun starts to come up over there. So maybe we start to see a few faster lap times towards the end of the session. I'd always try to put a little bit of I suppose, an asterisk when I say that track temperature is going to change things. I always think track temperature, increasing by a degree or two doesn't make as much of a difference as some people may let you think. The yellow flag's in Sector 2, by the way, as we're on board with Stephen Lexo, who is purple in Sector 1. It's cleared immediately. But perhaps it's starting to be prime time to do your qualifying runs, is I think what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely the best time to be putting in your best is by the end of the session, as is with any racing session, any racing simulation. Unless it obviously starts raining, but I doubt we're going to see that happening right here, right now. But yeah, as you say, I reckon a lot of these people are now putting in their quali runs, which is also tightening the grid quite a lot. Yeah, you're on Dix right now with a purple first sector, all the way down in 13th. So you see here, it's a lot of differences in how people are driving, a lot of differences in just which sectors they're able to really push hard on, and then maybe potentially lose a few tenths in some others.
I am starting to suspect, however, that purple is a little bit misleading. I think that is purple compared to the fastest lap we've seen in the session, obviously joining it an hour and a half into it, because I'm looking at the Race View live timing and it's saying that Yawn is with a 20.8, which is actually a few tenths off even the fastest the fastest first sector in this particular lap. So I'm not too sure I totally trust that piece of information, but if someone does light up the Race View timing screen, no doubt will tell you. Yawn is sitting there in 30th position. He's completed 58 laps in this session, I believe. No, 60 laps in this session. Now, I'm being told, Caitlin Penny for Reading Game Studios Racing in a very basic testing livery. Just a solid blue car.
A bit of baby blue.
I have to say, I think it's quite striking, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to find your car in the grid, it's going to be quite easy, isn't it?
I will paint it yellow next time so that you can really see it.
Yeah, it's interesting to have Caitlin Penny over here. It's funny to be on the opposite sides of the broadcast room for once.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh dear! There we go. First of many times I'm going to have to commentate on my car having a slide this season, and Penny aborts that particular lap time. I just suggest that she's on qualifying runs at the moment, aborting a lap like that. Is to O'Malley. He's on an out lap. I have made a promise, by the way, to not be totally biased towards my team this season. It might take the rest of this test to get that out of my system, because it actually has been when we started a few years ago, it was one of the sort of on the list of things to do to join GPVWC, so it's quite cool to have finally done it. But I had to commentate another series in far worse circumstances with my team, so hopefully we don't see any too major dramas involving us, and we can focus on the action that's a little bit easier to be unbiased about.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I've got my team in Super League now, but it's a good thing that I cannot be commentating a league that I also simultaneously race at. So yeah, that won't be happening, fortunately, on my side.
When I've done it in endurance races, it tends to go by quite okay, because you sort of, apart from referring it to my car or occasionally the team name, it's not really. I find it quite easy to detach myself from the race and the result. I've spent a long time commentating on my team actually throughout our existence, so hopefully it's a quick adjustment. Scott Mitchell-Marr, he's jumped up into 9th position in the number 89 car. Him and his brother have this wonderful little rivalry, don't they, Luke Mitchell and Scott Mitchell-Marr? Both drivers actually who are very, very similar in terms of pace. Not quite in this session, but definitely at the start of last year they were. And even throughout the season actually. They had a few very interesting battles as well. It was quite often that we had the two Mitchells. Of course, Scott did change his name to Mitchell Marm towards the end of that season. Slightly, I suppose, helps us a little bit in the commentary box, make a distinction between the two of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Kings Racing, a very interesting case actually. Jack Nicholls is in the session. He was in the session actually. Whether he's had to leave or not, I don't know. Fresh out of Saudi Arabia, of course, for the Formula E race over the weekend. I do find it incredible, and this will be the last time I gorp over the wonders of sim racing. But I do find it incredible that you can be commentating on a race in Saudi Arabia on Sunday, and then Tuesday you're doing a test in GPVWC. But Mitchell Marm goes with a 128.7, about 9/10 of a second off of the top time at the moment. But Nicholls has since, I believe, left the session, so just a single Kings Racing car. But Kings Racing, again, they're very much an upper midfield team last season, not quite your front runners. Or if it was Formula 1, I suppose you'd call them best of the rest. Off the top of my head, I think they finished around the top 5. And,
yeah, it's a team that I do know previously. They were in the, I think it was called... Okay, what was it called back then? It wasn't Formula Sprint 2 back when I joined GPV. It was...
Formula Challenge.
Formula Challenge, that's what it was, yes. I was in Formula Challenge, and I do very well remember their cars being on the grid. And they were certainly an upper midfield team, as you said.
Is Craig Patterson for Priority 1 Esports is in chat. Lots of new names. Says 2. Indeed, lots of new names on this grid. A lot of returning names as well. Recognise, of course, Mitchell, Lexo, Siffert, Patterson. And well, it's going to be interesting to see if we do see a sort of mix-up in the order of the grid. Last season, it was very much the same people at the top of it. And, well, this season, perhaps a little bit of a difference there. Jerry Bussard is racing Dan Hutt's car, so I wonder whether he is a permanent driver, whether he has signed an emergency contract, and in fact he is racing elsewhere, a little bit like what I believe Stephen Lexo is doing this year.
Yeah, Johan Bussell is an interesting one. I've not heard his name being spoken prior to this, but he seems to be very well on the pace. His time still stands on the top of the table with a 127.8. No one's been able to beat him since.
So Toom in chat, he says, is it Super Cup? Well, no, not quite. So we used to have, of course, Formula Challenge, Super Cup, Super League Lights, and Super League. Now we have FS2, FS1, SL2, and SL1, which is slightly confusing when you say it out loud. But I promise you, it's basically just, this is Formula Challenge. FS1 is Super Cup, and then SL2 is Super League Lights, and SL1 is, of course, Super League.
You know, some of the names that I do see and recognise on the table, definitely Luke Mitchell, Lexo, Riboli, Patson, Piskan, Tuomala, well, Ockenhog from my own personal experience, but I very well know that he's a new driver over here. Vicentijevic, Slarbon, Caitlin Penny, obviously. Yeah, those are about the names that I do recognise from prior experience. However, I do not know the history of GPV that well yet. I'll certainly take my time to review just how the current FS2 grid has done in previous seasons, and definitely learn a bit of GPVWC history.
Yes, absolutely, and I do find it fascinating with GPVWC. It's something you don't see in other series. With the career ladder, it's genuinely something where in 5 years' time you could see one of these guys, you know, winning Super League.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a pleasure to see some new and upcoming talents and see them grow as time goes by and potentially even dominate some of the upper tier series. I myself know quite a few people like that. Yeah, absolutely wouldn't surprise me if a few of these people that we see over here will find their way up into Super League sometime in the future.
And of course the teams as well. There's a lot of teams that even in my time in GPVWC have climbed up the career ladder quite nicely. I think the main example actually being Valet Esports, a team that I've been involved in loosely in times. I'm not too sure whether they are actually around this year, Valet, and what GPV League they are in. I know they were last season at least. So let's have a look actually if they are around. Let's look at their events section on their website. I'm sure they are. I know they're definitely doing FSR.
I know for certain, yeah, they've made a name for themselves in FSR. Rapidly climbing up the sim racing ladder, I would say.
And, in a bit of a tumultuous time for R-Factor 2 as well, it's nice to see that the cars are actually, the teams are able to still be competing and still, running, as SLL producer tells me, so Super League Lights. Thank you very much. I did think so. I thought I saw them in Super League Lights this year, but yeah, that's shocking for me because Valet, I remember them being in Formula Challenge back a couple of years ago, and just racing. I always mention they were not a junior team, but they were affiliated with my team for a time. Not in GPVWC, but in other leagues. We sort of had a partnership going on where we shared drivers for a time. That was on a different simulation. But even that, it's nice to see teams that you've competed against over the years climbing up the ladder up to Super League Lights. With some very, very fast drivers. I mean, I was a couple of years ago a test driver for, and I feel horrendous because I've totally forgotten which team it was, but I did a little bit of testing for them, not in official sessions. It was more a case of, it was very much a case of just doing laps and reporting back on the car as, there's Tazano into the wall and just big hits. Luckily, no red flags in this one, can just return to the pits and get back out. But I was just doing laps and laps and laps to try and find out stuff about the car for them. And the Super Cup guys, they were so fast compared to me. I mean, I'm not an incredible driver, but I like to think of myself someone who could be on base with a grid like this. And the Super Cup guys they were so incredibly fast. It was incredible. As you go up the career ladder, there's so many incredibly fast drivers. There's Penny having a massive slide on through Sector 2.
Yeah, as you say, it does sort of strike you just how fast certain people can be in their respective cars. I say it that way because obviously some people will have only the opportunity to be still racing in FS2, FS1, but they'll be extremely quick in their cars, so that they have the potential to be fast in those cars. However, it's always sort of a surprise sometimes just how people do as soon as they climb up to, say, Super Lights or Super League car. You never really know just how well their driving style will take to that car. Some will have exceptionally good pace and some will have very good tire saving skills, but it's difficult to pick out those sort of diamonds in the rough, if I can put it that way. But it's always a big job for those who are scouting for their teams to find these people over here and know exactly who's got the potential to be a Super League champion maybe in the future.
And I think you bring up a very interesting point, actually, because this is a series where you don't really have to worry about tyre management. I think one of the main things about FS2 is that race management skill, learning your racecraft. It's actually very similar to real-life Formula 3 racing in the fact that you find yourself in a big train. The cars aren't particularly powerful. They've got enough downforce to get around, but they're not, they're definitely no Formula One spec cars. Whereas when you go up to a Super League like, so even FS1 to an extent, where you do have pit stop strategies, that's when you start to build those skills in terms of in a competitive way. Obviously, most of these guys anyway will be doing endurance league because they'll be doing other things, even just playing things like F1 games where you're having to manage your tyres, you're having to do that. But in terms of doing it in a way where you're competitive in a competitive setting like this, it's almost a different skill to what you'd be doing in, say, an endurance league.
Yeah, absolutely. And this I can say from my own experience, jumping in from like other games that simulate tire wear, like Codemasters F1 games, let's take that as an example. It doesn't exactly simulate tire wear in the same way that a thoroughbred simulator like R-Factor 2 does. It took me many years to sort of master just how to, save my tires throughout a stint so that I can actually survive the end of the stint and not do any silly mistakes, potentially just ruin my tires so I'm like 5 seconds off the pace. But yeah, really, it is a tough thing to learn for some people, but again, it is a skill that can be improved over time.
11 minutes and 30 seconds to go in this one and only pre-season test for Formula Sprint 2 in 2023. It's Luke Mitchell who leads the way, only by 200th of a second from Jerry Van Boersel. Actually, we didn't pick up on that. Luke Mitchell has gone fastest in the time we've been talking. And, it's difficult to see when people go fastest, actually. It was quite recently. 69 laps for Luke Mitchell. The most lapped person, the most travelled person on this grid at the moment is Roy Siffert in 4th position. 82 laps in a test session. That is incredible. Actually, 2.5 hours and you've done 82 laps. He must have barely been into the pits.
Yeah, that's it. Literally just piled on the laps, put on a chunk of fuel and just let it rip for all the laps.
But I think one of the main things, one of the main storylines that we've been following so far in this session is the fact that this is the one time for the teams to show their cards or keep their cards close to their chest. In the case of a few of the teams here that I suspect may just be not sandbagging, but not really showing everything that they have to offer at the moment. Very much a data gathering session, learning the car, learning the setup, because you don't want to have a situation where you're scrambling for race 1 to try and figure out the car, and then you get into round 5, you finally figured out the setup, and well, it's a little bit too late because you've already had everyone else had a head start on you in the championship. And I always find, I don't know how true this is yet, but whenever I've been racing and a car has been changed, particularly with the official content, maybe not so much with these mod cars, but there just seems to be almost a scramble to break the car, and whoever can find that one absurd setup feature first is usually in with a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah, it's quite a tough game out there with literally any of the cars, modded cars included. It's really just a game of, well, educated guessed lottery. I'd put it that way. Sometimes, a lot of the times, the setup changes. I mean, on the surface, they'll make sense to some extent. However, really, if you want to find the fastest setup, you have to try things that really may seem illogical in some ways. So it's a very good point you put there. Yeah, it's something that a lot of these people will have to try to do. And it's also something that some people might not realize who are not particularly setup savvy, is that it's the same for everyone. Everyone will have to play this game of lottery, so why not do it yourself and potentially see if you can make the car just that 100th or a 10th faster.
It can literally be a game of tenths, can't it? As Luke Mitchell, it's a game of less than a tenth for him at the moment. 200ths of a second between him and Jerry Van Boersel. And actually, I'm quite impressed with the field spread. All 20 drivers spread by 3.9 seconds. It's 2.1 if you count just the 19. Hilton Nixon Nickerson, I should say, not quite being able to, I suppose, get in tune with that particular car just yet. I have to say, he's on the grid for Deltec, and he'll find the pace. But when you are in what I can only assume is obviously his first test, well, everyone's first test in the car, some people don't quite adapt as well as the top guys. And I honestly think it's slightly unfair. I honestly believe that someone like Luke Mitchell can go and race in something like FS1 or even SLL, and Luke would probably do probably a fair account of himself, whereas some of the other guys are here because they are actually just learning the game. They're just learning their craft almost.
Yeah, it is. It is as you say. Some people over here in the top are definitely fare well in the upper tier leagues, but it's not as to say that they're particularly smurfing. However, it is. Some people over here will be just starting out R Factor, and some of them will have already multiple years experience with the game, so they do know a few tricks here and there to keep them competitive in this car.
There's very much a sort of, I suppose, a difference, isn't there, in the fact that you've got drivers who sort of done a couple of academy races. They've decided, actually, I quite like this. It's a pretty fun hobby. I like this league. The racing's fun, and they've got the bug. They've gone and found themselves an FS2 seat, and now they're racing in FS2, and they're just here for fun essentially. They think I'm going to have a good race, finish right P15 or so, and we'll see where we end up. And then you have the drivers who are actually pretty intense on trying to find themselves climbing up the career ladder, whether that be on the front of their team, whether that be on the front of them as a driver. And I think that creates quite an interesting dynamic. So it very much shows that it is essentially for everyone, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. You'll have to learn. Obviously, within a team there can be a lot of people with different philosophies to their driving, and you'll have to learn to cooperate with people with different sort of approach to the sim racing as either a hobby or something they want to pursue further. So it's definitely something you have to keep in mind. Some people may not be taking this as seriously necessarily, maybe not, like, I shouldn't say taking it seriously, but people who might not mind so much if they finish down the order. Whereas then there's the other people who drive to survive, so to say. Will fight for P1 like their life depends on it.
Absolutely. It's 5 minutes to go in the first of the pre-season test. I did earlier say that, I say the first, the only pre-season test to my knowledge. I did say earlier this is the first GPVWC broadcast of the year. Of course, we did have the Academy series with the wonderful Ed Hunter and Josh Birch a little bit earlier on in the year, but this is the first career ladder stream of this season. If I'm not mistaken, there is another Academy round coming up before we go into the season for the career ladder. That will be very interesting. Maybe a chance for a couple of people to finally find themselves on the career ladder. Is that turn what with two people?
So two cars, run themselves. Not sure if there was contact, but certainly looked like it.
Well, there's Justin van der Smissen, another name that I'm actually quite familiar with. Justin, I think definitely with aspirations to climb up the career ladder. Hello, Ed. Just speak of the devil and he shall appear. Hello, Ed. Welcome to the YouTube chat. And good job on the Academy commentary. Of course, not likening you to the devil, but anyway, Justin loses the car along the straight. Dare I say that might have been slightly intentional from him, just checking his car control. Well, he's in 17th. The man, as I was saying, I definitely know has intentions to go up through the career ladder on his day. Justin can put in a very good performance.
Yeah, I've seen Justin actually drive for a team that I drove for before, which was Santon Motorsport for FS1. And certainly he seems to be quite a promising guy. I've heard his name spoken out a few times, and hopefully we can see him battling it out in the future.
Santon, a name that has been around GPVWC for ages. Jan, really nice guy. Did does liveries. I don't think very regularly anymore, but has done some incredible liveries for me in the past. And his team, of course, have a very good history in this league, I suppose.
Yeah, he actually even made the first official Super Venturi livery when even my team wasn't really that official. But yes, shout out to Jan Santen for doing that. Technically being a part of getting Super Venturi on its feet in the early days.
I remember Jan just one day messaged me 3 variations of a new logo for my team, and just goes, "Here you go, use it as you see fit." there was 3 different colours. There was a transparent variant. It was great. It was anyway, very charitable, Jan Santon. As Jake Denon says, Santa, a very good team. As welcome to the chat, Jake. He's got Mitchell Mark. Last couple of laps of the session then. A couple of people I assume won't be taking any further part in it. That's Patterson, Vishnutovic and Slaven. Everyone else, Caleb Penny into the pits as well. Everyone else is on a lap at the moment, or at least out of the pits. As next Academy round, according to Edis Valencia, Monday 13th. I don't have that information myself, but take your word for it. He's got Mitchell Mom. Nice little bit of slipstream on one of the VMS Sun Edits cars, I think that is. We'll have to go around the long way round. This is...
Oh, it looked like they were going to go side by side through the Dunlop corner. Just about backed out of it before anything more serious happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And not really wanting to race at this stage in the session. It can pay, though, to have 2 cars here, because I suppose if you're able to get that running in traffic, that can be quite a big factor. He's got Mitchell Mott making sure that he gives himself enough room for this final lap of the session. There's a car actually ahead of him. There's into the wall. Is that one of the Red Fen cars, I dare say? It might have been Tuamala. I'm not too sure. It wasn't. No, it was one of the Red Fen cars, actually. That would have been Jorn Dix, I believe. Here's Roy Siffert. Got 3 cars on the grid. Red Fen, I do believe. Well, obviously, evidently, it's allowed. I think it was you're allowed up to 3 cars showing in this event. They are one of the only teams who have got 3 cars. In fact, there's not many teams who have had 2 cars, I think, showing at this event. With 22 seconds to go, we'll start to filter in the final laps of this first pre-season test and start to finally figure out who is looking good heading into round 1 in Imola.
You know, it's gotten even closer now. Looking at the top 6, all within 3/10 of the leader now. Yeah, people really putting in their best as the session has come to an end. Time-wise, however, people who are still on a lap may still complete those. As we see Jerry Van Bussel going on his final attempt, approaching the second to last corner, carrying a nice amount of speed through there. A nice tight line, not compromising any entry or exit speed there. Beautiful line. No corrections needed. Potentially going to be the fastest lap even. Let's see how will his time compare as he crosses the line. And yes, he makes it. It's a 127.755 just on the line before the session ends.
It's a great lap for Jerry Van Bussel. Here's Stephen Lexo. Can he go any faster? Rounding the final couple of corners now into Sector 3. It's so difficult, this part of the circuit. Really have to make sure that you're aware of where the corner is. This corner, the apex, is very difficult to find. Of course, Stephen Lexo is able to find the apex. Shouldn't be fastest lap of the session, I don't think. One of, I think, 4 drivers maybe yet to take the checker flag. Crossing the line, Stephen Lexo won't be fastest of the session. It will be a 28 flat. He stays third, and that's a pretty decent session for Stephen Lexo. 72, 101 laps even. My word.
Wow.
But
you know, My guess is that a few of those laps are actually counted, even though they might have not completed those, as people are allowed to exit mid-lap. So the game does count them still as a lap, which potentially adds on a few fake laps in there. But yeah, definitely a impressive count going over the 100 limit there.
Yes, potentially. Let's take a look at the results then. It's Gaten and Benny, the last person to head into the pits, and then we'll round off with a few closing thoughts from Jan. But here are the results as they fade onto your screen. Eventually, Jerry Van Bussel tops the one and only preseason test for Formula Sprint 2. Luke Mitchell is narrowly behind him, 200th of a second. Stephen Lexo is in third for Red Fen Racing. Craig Patterson is in fourth with Royce Siffert in fifth. Massimiliano Riboli is in sixth with Matthews Piskzan in seventh. Scott Mitchell-Marms is in eighth. Maxime Bilou is in ninth with Terran Grech in 10th. A few people leaving the session, just throwing off our results helpfully. Anyway, then it's Michael Tuomala, Magnus Arkenhaug, Justin van der Smissen, Luca Gray, Jorn Dix, Mihailo Vifintuvic, Dominic Slaven, Brandon Roberts, Caitlin Penny, and Hilton Nickerson. So the results of the first pre-season test, then the first session for the career ladder this season. And Jan Granqvist, closing thoughts. Who do you think is well, the winners and losers so far? The people looking good and the people perhaps with a little bit of work to do?
I'd say I didn't really think there are too many people with huge amounts of work to do here, to be honest. It looked like a lot of the people had it in them in the final closing seconds of the session to improve their laps and get the field even a tiny bit more tighter. But definitely someone who impressed me was Jerry Van Bussel there, taking the fastest lap of the session, and obviously Luke Mitchell fighting him out throughout the session, actually, with very close lap times.
Absolutely. Well, let's round this broadcast out then. Thank you all very much for watching, wherever you are in the world this evening. And, well, FS2 should be a very exciting season. You can join us in a few days' time, or in fact, I think next week, actually, for the Formula Sprint 1 test. And, of course, then Super League and Super League Lights starts up as well. But thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you all later. Good night.